All right, should be good to go. So doing safety differently. This presentation is very much so not your typical presentation on safety management systems. It's very unique in the fact that it takes out how people act in the workplace and how we can engineer our systems around them. So the title Doing Safety Differently is just that. We want to try to change the way that organizations typically approach safety and health, and this is one way to do it. So, no, it's not changing. What should I do? God, it's definitely not working.
Nope.
That sucks. All right, there we go. So when we talk about safety differently, there's four main things that I want you guys to take away from this presentation. That's changing our overall thinking around safety and health performance, and I use SHP for short throughout the presentation. I'll try to make sure I use the acronym appropriately, like safety and health performance instead of SHP. Another thing, establish a mindset that error is okay and it is normal. So that's very hard for most people to actually do. It's okay to make mistakes. People make mistakes all the time. How many people have bitten their lip while they're eating dinner? That's a mistake. That's something that's just going to happen, and we have to learn to accept that within our organizations. Third, establish that workers are the solution to most problems. That's not really the way that the construction industry thinks right now. Most of the time, we blame the worker for the problem that occurred. So we want to try to change that norm. And then lastly, when I give this presentation to organizations, I ask that they take two things that they can use back to their organization. This would be similar to you guys and what I would ask on a test, right? So I'm looking for two things that you're taking away from this presentation that you can tell me about, okay? So that's two goals. So the definition of safety, does anyone want to try to give me their own definition of what safety is? It seems pretty simple, but it's really not, right? Anyone want to try to take a guess? No. So currently, the way that we look at safety, the current view, which I refer to as the old view, we refer to safety as being defined by outcomes. So things that have already happened. So those are like lagging indicators. Remember that talk that we had? So lagging indicators to us are like the number of incidents or accidents or injuries that we have, the rates that are on our OSHA 300 and 300A forms. It's our mod rates. It's all the things that have already happened in our organization that we can't change. We're measuring the number of injuries. We're measuring the number of people that have died. There's not much that we can do about it. But this is the way that we look at safety. And the reason that I say that is, the way I can explain it to you best is through this example. So on the left-hand side, there's a picture of a guy not wearing any fall protection, right? He does it every day. He goes to work. He frames, works on roofing, and he doesn't wear any fall protection. The guy on the right owns his own business, has 10 guys that work for him, but he and his employees wear fall protection every time they're exposed to a fall 6 feet or greater. But if we're measuring safety in the current definition of safety that we have, they're equally as safe because both their experience modification rates, their EMR, lagging indicator for insurance companies, are 0.81. So they're below the national average in EMR. They've both had no injuries this year, and they both have had no fatalities this year. So when we take away these pictures and we just look at these numbers, we would say both these companies are equally as safe, right? But if we're looking at the new definition of safety that we're going to be looking at in a second, that may not be true. The purpose of me showing you this example is that you can't just measure safety on outcomes. You've got to look at different things in order to measure how safe someone actually is. The other thing you want to ask yourself when you're looking at lagging indicators and the old view of safety, did you just get lucky or were you actually safe? So this guy was pretty lucky in 2018, right? Didn't wear any fall protection, and thank goodness he or any of his employees didn't fall. This person was actually safe. They weren't lucky, they had built capacity into their organization by using fall protection equipment. So if they fall, they're going to be caught, right? Where this guy would just hit the ground. Does this make sense now why the old definition of safety probably isn't a good definition of safety? So let's talk about some more stuff in the old view of safety. Has anyone ever seen Heinrich's pyramid before? How many of you have taken behavior-based safety? You guys have definitely seen this before, right? So for those of you that don't know what Heinrich's pyramid is, this pyramid is a predictor, quote unquote, predictor of how injuries occur and how many occur for each behavior that you have in your organization. So Heinrich in 1931, he collected thousands of pieces of information and put it into this giant spreadsheet from a bunch of his clients, Travelers Insurance. What he was trying to measure was, is there a certain number of injuries that leads to severe injuries that leads to fatalities? So if you have X number of recordable injuries, will you have X number of lost time injuries? And then will that lead to X number of fatalities? And what he came out with was the first 3 sections of this pyramid. In his research, all the data that he collected, he said that for every 300 recordable injuries that occur, you're going to have 30 lost time injuries. For every 30 lost time injuries you're going to have 1 fatality. Okay. Since Heinrich came out with this pyramid, there's been 2 additional studies to add to his work. Those studies, the first one after Heinrich said that 30,000 misses, you're going to have 300 recordables, you're going to have 30 lost time incidents and 1 fatality. Then the next study that came out built onto this. 300,000 unsafe acts is going to lead to 30,000 near misses, 300 reportable injuries, 30 lost time incidents, and 1 fatality. There's a few things that are completely wrong with this, okay? Just because you're able to measure 300,000 unsafe behaviors in your organization doesn't mean those are the only unsafe behaviors that you have had. It's physically impossible to measure every unsafe behavior that you have in your organization. You're never going to do it. So that's the first thing that's wrong with this. Secondly, just because you have 300,000 unsafe behaviors does not mean that you're going to have 30,000 near misses. There's no correlation in severity there, all right? So really, what I'm trying to say here, just to sum it up, this pyramid is pretty much entirely incorrect. It is not predictive of future events. Just because you have 300 reportable injuries on your OSHA 300 logs doesn't mean on the 301st injury you're going to have a fatality. It just doesn't work that way. It can't predict the future, and that's what we tried to do. Okay? And just to prove this to you, I want to show you some data. Okay? So according to Heinrich's triangle, the pyramid, if we reduce this by half, that means we're going to reduce this by half. So instead of 300,000 unsafe behaviors, we're going to have 150,000, right? Well, according to Heinrich, that means we're only going to have 15,000 near misses. We're only going to have 150 reportable injuries. We're only going to have 15 lost time injuries and then 0.5 fatalities, right? So if we're cutting our unsafe acts in half, that means we should see the rest of the pyramid be reduced at the same rate, 50% cut. But when we look at this table, this red line here is the fatality rate in all private industry in the United States. This top line here is total reportable rate, TRC. You guys remember going over that? So what this shows is we're reducing our less than severe injury rates pretty dramatically. We're cutting it in half over a period of 10 years. So every decade, we cut it in half roughly. But when we look at fatality rates, it stays about the same. So what does this tell us? If Heinrich was correct and with his pyramid, if we're reducing injury rates at this rate, this top line right here, that means we should be reducing fatality rates at the same rate. Is that what that graph shows? No. So there's theory and there's some data to back up why Heinrich's pyramid is entirely false. Okay? It is not a predictor of severity. Okay? That's very important to know. Another thing, Heinrich's pyramid assumes that the same people that hurt people kill people. But let me ask you these questions. When was the last time that you had an electrician die because of a sprained ankle? I can't think of any, can you? When's the last time that you've heard of someone being killed because they bruised their finger? I haven't heard any. So you start to ask those questions, well, if I reduce my bruised fingers, the number of bruised fingers that I have, and the number of sprained ankles that I have, that means I'm going to prevent a fatality, right? No, it doesn't work like that. So you see why old view safety is kind of obsolete. It's past data that we thought was right, but really isn't that right. So now we've got to talk about the new definition of safety. So where do we want to be? Where are we going right now? Where will you guys be in 10 years? New view safety is defined by the presence of capacity. We're gonna talk about that, so don't let it confuse you yet. Capacity is another way to say the ability to fail safely in your organization. So when something goes wrong in your organization, what do I have in place to protect someone? Okay, so that's the new view. I would know that definition for a test or quiz. Same with old view. So when we talk about capacity, I think it's a lot easier just to explain it to you in an example. So any of you guys been to Fenway Park? Not very many of us. A few of you, handful. All right. So this is a picture from 2003 at Fenway Park. Remember the good times when only the backstop had netting on it? We'll remember that for the next slide. What Fenway originally had in 2003, 2004 time range was that net that just covered the backstop with a sign that said, stay clear of net and be alert, foul balls, and bats hurt. How many people drink at baseball games? I do. How many people eat hot dogs at baseball games? Chips, Cracker Jacks? How many people text during baseball games? How many people talk to the person next to them at baseball games? Do you think you're constantly going to be watching for a foul ball or a bat to come at you? Is it reasonable to expect someone at a baseball game to always be on constant alert for a bat or a baseball to come at you? No, it's not. So they're Fenway right now, or the Red Sox right now, are asking for people to stay alert at all times. And if they get hurt, it's pretty much their fault because they weren't paying attention. Until this happened. This was 2017, 2018. Woman got hit in the head by a foul ball. Still disabled to this day, from what I'm told. She sued the Red Sox. She won $9.5 million, and I've heard that this suit has continued to a larger number. She wasn't paying attention. A ball that was coming 125 miles an hour off the bat hit her in the head, and now she's disabled. Well, the Red Sox had that sign that was supposed to protect her, right? But when we look at the new view of safety, we've got to build capacity into our system. So this is what Fenway Park looks like right now. There's infield nets all the way around the infield, right? Foul ball nets, bats that slip out of people's hands. When those balls and those bats come at the fans, they're going to hit the screen instead of the fans. So what does that allow people to do? Text, eat hot dogs, drink as much as they want, talk to their friends next to them. We're not relying on the person anymore. We've built capacity into our system so that when a foul ball comes at someone and they're not paying attention, we've got their back. So this is what I mean by failing safely. We had a failure and someone not paying attention, right? Without this net, that ball hit them. New view safety, we had someone fail not paying attention. We built capacity, this net, and the ball hit the net instead of the person. Does capacity make sense to you guys now? If it doesn't, I got another example for you. This is a more serious example. So every year, 38 kids die in the United States in hot cars. It's been this way for the last 10 years at least. Okay. What happens to parents when they leave a child in a hot car? Put in jail. What's that? Put in jail. Put in jail. They get punished. They get blamed. All that stuff happens to the individual that left the child in the car. What do you think happens the next year? Another 38 kids die in hot cars. Think about that for a second. So we're taking the parent, putting them in jail. We think we're doing the right thing. We expect that people won't do this in the future because that person went to jail, but the following year, another 38 kids die. Did we do anything to actually fix the problem? No. Until Tesla decided they were going to. This is capacity, by the way. This is an example of capacity. So in our normal world, without Tesla, we're just going to continue to throw people in jail for leaving their kids in a hot car. Tesla said, no, I'm going to fix the system. And what they did last year was send out a patch to all of their Teslas and build it into their new Teslas called the Pet Saver or something similar to that, where it can detect motion inside a Tesla while the car is off and you're not in there. And it sends an alert when that motion is detected and the heat in the car rises above, I think it's 72 degrees. When that alert goes out, it turns the car on automatically and starts the air conditioner so it never reaches above 70 degrees in the vehicle. Now, you heard me say Pet Saver in the beginning, right? Or whatever the name it is. It's about pets. That's what it's for on paper. Tesla didn't build this for any pet. They built this for children. The lawyers will not let them patent this for children. They can't take the responsibility or the liability. Okay? This Pet Saver mode is designed to keep those next 38 kids from dying in hot vehicles. Tesla isn't blaming anyone. Tesla's not throwing anyone in jail. They've built capacity into their vehicle so that the next time that a parent leaves a child in the vehicle, that car turns on, and that child's going to be great. They're going to be sleeping away, they're going to be talking away, playing while the parents inside the store at work. Okay? Not only that, they can stay in the car as long as that air conditioner's on. You're going to continuously get phone calls, emails, and text alerts until that parent or the owner of the pet comes up to the car and takes them out of the vehicle. So old view safety, we're going to look at the results and blame someone for it. New view safety, we're going to do what Tesla did and build capacity into our systems. So the next time something does go wrong, we've got something to take its place. We've got their back, right? So in doing this, we have to think about what's called human and organizational performance, or HOP, hop like a bunny. And there's 5 key foundations to human performance that you would have to do in order to start your journey onto new view safety. And those 5 different foundations or pillars or elements, whatever you guys want to call them, those core things that you have to pay attention to. Number 1, error is normal and people make mistakes. It's in our human nature. Blame fixes nothing. So when we talked about blaming the parent and putting them in jail, that did absolutely nothing for the next summer when those other 38 kids died, right? So we have to take the mentality that blame doesn't correct anything in our system. Response to errors matter. Number 3. The way that you respond to failure, whether it's accepting or denying, is critically important to the success of any HOP program. 4, context and systems drive behaviors. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. It's more complex. And learning is vital. So when something goes wrong, you can fix it, but if you don't learn from it to improve, then nothing's going to ever change. We're going to go over each individual one of these in more detail here. So the first one, error is normal. Error and failure, the more scary word, is going to happen no matter what you do. You could think that you have the best employees in the world, the best equipment, the best processes, the best everything in your organization. I guarantee you something's still going to go wrong. You're going to have errors and failures in your organization. Okay? You need to accept it. It's as simple as that. It's going to happen. That's okay. But let's do something about it when we actually encounter error. Now, when we talk about errors, there are some precursors or some predictable factors that you have to take into account that could lead to errors. So these bullet points right here, all these things will lead to an error at some point in time. It's just a matter of time. The first one, the lack of a breakdown in management controls. So if management doesn't assign a process, a procedure, give instruction, or anything of that nature, there's probably going to be an error that occurs. If management doesn't set clear expectations for something, there's probably going to be an error that occurs. Non-routine work. We're actually coming up on a class next week, I think, on non-routine work around rework, SIS, and quality. We're going to talk about that quite a bit more. But non-routine work is just work that we don't experience every day. We're unfamiliar with it, meaning we don't know all the proper processes and procedures and all the controls that we need. So errors are more likely to happen during non-routine work. Human conditions. If I come into work really happy or really sad, or if I get complacent, or if, I don't know, I'm daydreaming, errors are more likely to occur. That one's really hard to fix, and you probably will never fix it. Rushing. What's the #1 killer in construction? Do you guys remember? What was it? Schedule. So what do you think a lot of construction people do when schedule is an issue? Rush. This is why we have so many fatalities in construction. Okay? People rushing. It leads to errors, which leads to fatalities. High workloads. #1 killer in construction, schedule. When the schedule is tight, you build in more work. High workloads leads to more errors. Interrupted work. Carpenter comes in, builds a wall. The wall is 6 inches off where it needs to be. What do they got to do? Stop their work so they can go back and fix that wall. Happens all the time in construction. Multitasking. And lastly, workarounds. How many people have found their own way of building something when they're not following the directions? How many people get something brand new, like a Lego model, and just throw out the directions, build it themselves? So that's a workaround. All these things are in construction, aren't they? From what we know about construction in this class, anyway, all these things can be very, very prevalent on any construction project. Hence why construction is so dangerous, right? Foundation #2 in this process. Blame fixes nothing. Okay, we talked about Tesla. You blame the parent, you put them in jail. Well, next year another 38 kids die. We didn't really fix anything in our system. Okay? That's why blame doesn't fix anything. You can blame and fire people all you want, but you're really not protecting anyone that's coming up in the future to do that same work. Now, it's important that we look back at the old view and the new view when we talk about blame. Because in the old view, the worker is the problem and we need to fix them. So if someone is off task or they don't follow directions specifically, we immediately say, you need to do it this way. Rather than, well, why are you doing it that way and is that way better? You see the difference there? Rather than telling someone what to do, we're asking them to tell us what to do. Then the new view, the worker is a solution. They fix the system using the worker. Okay? So you're asking what do they need? Why do they do what they do? How are they doing it? And is that process better than the process that we currently have? This is simplistically, this is a difference in old view between blame and punishment versus learning and improving. Okay? There's a really good quote from Steve Jobs up there. Steve Jobs, when he was still alive, he said, it doesn't make sense to hire smart people and tell them what to do. We hire smart people so they can tell us what to do. That's the approach you have to take with blame. Okay? When someone's doing something outside the regular scope of work, you got to ask yourself, why are they doing it that way? Is it because it's easier and more efficient? Is it safer that they're doing it that way? Versus, absolutely not, you have to do it the way I'm telling you to do it. Blame and punish versus learn and improve. Okay? Foundation 3, response to error matters. This is a hard one because, use an example here. When someone's doing something wrong in construction and the site super walks up on them, what do you think their first reaction is? Well, you yell at them, right? Why are you doing it that way? Do it this way. You idiot, stop doing it this way, right? That is common in any project that you're going to get onto. But if you're going to do it the right way, you can't blame the worker for what they're doing. You've got to approach it as a learning event. So why are they doing what they're doing? Is there something that I can do to help them in the whole process? Is there some reason that, or is there a reason that they found an efficiency in that process, and can I take that efficiency back so the rest of the project can do it? Okay. System factors always contribute to error. All right. So that means when someone's doing something, it's not just because they feel like doing it, it's because we're allowing them to do it. Right? What does that mean? There's conditions in our organizations to let people act the way that they act. Okay? So at Fenway Park, with the Nets example, right? Someone's going to sit in the stands and watch baseball. It's reasonable to expect that they're not going to be paying attention to the field 100% of the time. It's in the system, right? They're just going to act that way. So instead, we change the whole system to where we can protect them when they don't act the right way. Does this make sense? A little bit, maybe. Then the third part of the third foundation, fix the error, do not let its existence continue. This isn't up here, but you guys should write this down. Find it, fix it, learn it. Okay, OSHA has this great, I don't know what you want to call it, phrase that they use, find it, fix it. Okay, but you can find a hazard and you can fix the hazard. You don't learn from it so it doesn't happen again in the future. It's going to happen again in the future. Find it, fix it, learn it. Okay? So when someone's doing something wrong, you've identified and find it, you're going to fix it with them, and then you're going to learn from it. So why are they doing what they're doing, and will it help us in the future? The best question to ask for Foundation 3 is, did the worker fail the system, or did the system fail the worker? Okay? In the case of the Red Sox, the system failed the worker originally, or the person in the seats, right? She got hit by a foul ball. We didn't do anything to protect her, other than put a stupid sign up that says, pay attention. Okay? So asking yourself, did the worker fail the system, or did the system fail the worker, really helps narrow down your response to error. Okay? There's a few more things that I want to add into this, and a few quotes in here. You got to remember that workers aren't machines, and errors are going to happen. Remember the first foundation. It's going to happen no matter what you do. It's in human nature. People have made mistakes since the first person that was on this planet. Okay? A lot of that has to do with our evolution as a humankind. All right? So think about these quotes and thinking about the response to failure. This one's from Winston Churchill, one of the greatest leaders of the world, really. A former leader of World War II, I think it was. His quote is, "Success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage that continue that counts." So what that really means is, you had an error, it's okay. How you respond to that error is what really matters. So if you're just going to blame someone for that mistake and not do anything to fix it in the future, then shame on you. But if you continue beyond that error or failure and learn from it, that's what really matters. Okay? Another one from Henry Ford. Failure is simply the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently. What does he mean by that? When someone makes a mistake, it's an opportunity to learn. It's not an opportunity to blame. And that's why Ford is one of the largest motor vehicle companies in the world right now. Okay? So think about those quotes. If I ask you to put this on or write about this on a test or quiz. Okay? Number 4, systems drives behavior. This one's pretty hard to understand without me giving you examples. So I want to give you some examples to really have you think about this. So nurses. Anyone know a nurse, family, friend, anything like that? A lot of us do, right? One of the most stressful and serious professions that we have in the United States right now. And there's a serious need for them. They go to work, they encounter non-routine work. Most of the time they've got to rush because there's so many patients to take care of. A lot of the time they're under pressures from management to get it done as fast as possible. So they've got heavy workloads, they're rushing, they've encountered non-routine work because they've always got a different patient in there. Not to mention the fact that their patients also die and they see mutilating injuries every single day. talk about PTSD, right? So the nursing profession is a pretty rough job. And guess what? Nurses make mistakes. So the example I'm going to give you is about nurses, and I want you to keep that description of a nurse's job in mind when we talk about this. In Australia, there was a hospital that was encountering several missed dosages to patients. So nurses were giving the wrong amount of medicine to a patient, right? This happened over a course of a few years. What do you think they did the first time a nurse gave an incorrect dose to a patient? What do you think the hospital did? Fired him. Second time this happened, what do you think they did? Fired her. The third time, they said, okay, we're going to fire you too. And then the president had the balls to say, wait a minute, there's something wrong here. And they contacted a consultant to come in and really identify why these missed dosages were occurring. And what they found is, so the consultant comes into the hospital. The first thing the consultant asks for, I want to see your medicine cabinets. Okay? Opens up the medicine cabinets and looks at a particular medication, and they all look like this. Okay? They all look the same. They're the same size, the same shape, the same color. The only difference in the medicine vials is the dosages. Okay? 10, 20, 30, 40 milliliters, whatever it was, right? This is not the actual vial that they use, it's just an example. So the consultant opens up the cabinets, realizes that these are all the same, and says, well, no wonder the nurses have been making mistakes. You're asking someone that's under a tremendous amount of stress, is worrying about their patients, has a heavy workload, has to rush, all the different predictors that we talked about in the beginning of the slideshow, right? They're all a part of a nurse's job. You're asking that individual under that tremendous stress to come to a medicine cabinet, grab a vial and go give it to a patient as fast as they can. Do you think it's reasonable to think that a nurse is going to grab the wrong vial of medication? They're all the same size, the same shape, the same color, except for a tiny ass font on the bottle. I would say yes. I would actually argue that it's going to happen no matter what. You can train them as much as you want. You can tell them all you want that they have to really select the correct dosage. I guarantee you it will still happen. So what did they do? They realized that that's pretty reasonable. A nurse is going to make a mistake when all the vials are the same color, shape, size. Well, they changed all that. They changed the color of the vials. Each medication, different color. Each dosage, different size. They even threw in different shapes. So instead of putting in a cylindrical vial, they made square vials. They made circular ones. They made whatever it was. They changed all the vials so each dosage was different. That means the nurse is going to be able to identify the dosage just based on the shape. So that was the first thing that they did. The second thing that they did was start a scanning process for their patients. Nurse gets the vial, goes to the patient, scans the vial prior to administering the dose, and then administers the dose. If that dosage is incorrect, it sends an alert immediately to the screen. The nurse can't administer that dose, or shouldn't. Right? So they built capacity into their system. Instead of saying, nurse, you better pick the right vial, and we're going to retrain you to do it, they've changed something in their system to make it more reliable. Okay, so that's the system that we changed. That wasn't an individual. We changed something in our process that helped someone to perform safer work. Another example that I can give on this is actually from Erica. This is one of her clients, an example that she encountered in the field. So a normal wood processing facility, you take in a regular tree, it's got bark on it, it's just cut into lengthy sections. It goes into a machine called the debarker. Okay, so the log is actually being fed on the other side of this machine, and it gets fed through a series of blades that rotate very, very fast. Okay, and this machine takes all the bark off the log, so it can be put into the mill, and you can get wood that comes out like 2x4s, 2x6s, whatever it may be, right? Well, at this facility, this debarker jammed all the time, right? Every so many logs or however many hours it was running, I forget what the exact measurement was, it would jam. So what would people do? They'd go unjam it, remove the debris from the debarker, okay? Now that's great in the process, right? So we're getting right back to work. We've got to get as many boards out as humanly possible. I'm just going to clear the jam, we're going to move on. Instead of asking, why is it jamming? And fixing that problem. This is something that we call non-routine work that has become routine. Okay? And this is a system drives behavior example as well. So non-routine work is an interruption in any of your systems, right? Any of your work processes. When non-routine work becomes normal, it then is called routine work. Okay? It's normalized work. So we do something wrong so many times that we think it's right. It's scary how that works. Okay? So that's an example of where if we had just changed the process a little bit and figured out why the jam was occurring, the person that got hit square in the chest with a log wouldn't be in the hospital. And that's what happened. So this person went to go unjam this debarker and got hit square in the chest with a log. They was severely injured. They were fixing the symptom of a problem in the system rather than the system. Okay? So this is the most important component or important foundation pillar, whatever you want to call it. It's the most important thing that we're probably going to talk about today. And that is Foundation 5, learning is vital. And the best way to explain this, or at the beginning of this, is through what I call the stick model. Everyone's got a different name for it. And it can be used interchangeably in different industries and different contexts. But in terms of safety, we're going to look at the stick model and its relationship to an overall organization. So when we talk about a spear or a stick, back in caveman days, when a caveman throws that stick at a woolly mammoth, what part of the stick is doing the work? Sharp end of the stick, right? It's going to pierce the animal's skin and hopefully kill it so they have meat for their family. Now, when we look at this in terms of an organization, the stick model is pretty similar to that. Workers are doing the most work in the system. Then they've got some other parts of the system that contribute to the work itself, but don't do the work itself, right? So when they're throwing that spear, part of the spear that's doing the work is the tip, and the rest of the spear is just supporting that throw. So we got to think about workers as the people that are physically doing the work and know the work the most. But in our current old view of safety, workers have the least amount of influence over the system. Okay? Any decisions that are made usually start with the managers or the supervisors or the frontline foreman, whatever it may be. And in the case of OSHA, some people in a nice mansion somewhere deciding that we're going to make rules about an industry we've never worked in. And that's where regulators come into play. Customers also have something to do with it because they can influence the system. But what we want to take away from this is workers have the most risk and have the least amount of overall say in the system. And that we need to change that. We need to make sure that the worker has the most input into any system. Remember the quote from Steve Jobs, we hire smart people to tell us what to do. That's the way that you have to think about it. So continue on with learning. Yeah, so we got to remember the sharp end of the stick as we move forward from here. Learning from failure instead of blaming for failure is much more important than just finding the blame. Fixing it is critical. And how are we going to do that? There's a few different ways we can do it. Pre-accident investigations. And that sounds pretty strange. But this is the concept of thinking about an incident of if it fails, well, it's when it fails instead of if it fails. So we might think, well, if this happens, then we might have an injury. versus when this happens, we're going to have an injury. Right? So the best example I can give you is a crane. Well, if the crane load falls, it could kill someone. We're taking a risk saying, well, if it falls, there's a pretty low likelihood that it will fall. If it falls, then, well, someone dies. Instead of asking yourself, when that falls, what do we have in place? Okay? And that's where your pre-accident investigation comes in. When the crane load falls, are we going to kill someone? And the crane hasn't fallen yet. We haven't got that, right? When the crane load falls, what do I have? Can you start your investigation right there? And if you don't know, you've got to build in some controls so that when the load falls, it's not crushing someone. You're not going over a populated building. You're not loading it onto a building and crushing the building like in New Orleans. You're going to make sure of all that stuff. So thinking about an accident of when it's going to happen, what do I have, is a pre-accident investigation. If versus when. The other important part of learning is finding successes. So when we go back to the Barker example, right? Successful work means that there's no jams in the system. If we know that, that means when something is going wrong in the system, we can identify and correct it. Okay? So finding what is correct work and then comparing it to the errors in the system, that's how you're going to learn. Well, what can we do to prevent those errors from occurring? Is there something in the debarker that we could fix so it doesn't continue to jam, right? Then create buy-in with the sharp end of the stick. Use your workers, use your workers, use your workers. I can't say that enough. If you're not using your workers, this will never work, ever. And then build a robust system, capacity, is another way to say that. Tesla, Fenway. There's other examples that I can give you if you're still confused about it, but really think about Tesla. That's the best one to think about. So I can say as much as I want to pre-accident investigations and all this stuff, but the reality is we're going to have errors that are made, and we have to do something about it. And this is where we start to do learning teams. And this is, we can have a whole other class on learning teams, but this is the basics on how to start a learning team. You have to create a standard list of priority learning events. So remember the Fatal 4 we talked about, like the first week? If any events occur that encounter the Fatal 4, you should prioritize those for a learning event. So falls, electrocutions, caught-ins, struck-bys. If any of your events encounter those 4 things, you do a learning team immediately. It's at the top of your priority list. Okay? Create your learning teams comprised of workers, no managers at all. And that's a really, really hard one to get over. That is one of the bigger bumps that you're going to encounter when doing this in any organization. The reason being, a manager always wants to know and needs to know what's going on. It's bullshit. They really don't know how work is done. The worker does. And the worker knows how to fix it the best. They know the workarounds. They know the solutions to the problems. We just need to listen to it and actually do something about it. Discuss the employee's view of the problem. So if the employee says, well, I don't know why we're doing it this way, I have another way we can be doing it, don't you think you might want to listen to that to see if it's a useful way? Just a thought. Employees should discuss the solutions with a facilitator. And most of the time, you guys are going to be facilitator. When you're facilitating workers to get to solutions, you don't ask the questions. You ask, well, what do you think about that? You don't actually answer any of the questions that they have. You want to just keep asking them, what do they think? You don't want to back them into a corner of a bias. So you don't want your opinion in the mix. You want what the workers think. And that means a lot to them, whether they know it or not. So we've gone through this process, and the employees do come out with a solution, right? You've got to actually use the solution. Remember the whole plan, do, check, act thing that we've been doing all semester? I've been doing it with the evaluations. We did it during class. Well, this is a continuous improvement process here. So the employees have made the plan. It's our job to actually act on the plan. And then once it's in plan, it's actually being performed. We're checking it. We're acting upon it if it needs to be corrected. So employees have done the plan and do, along with management. Management's also going to check it. And if there's something wrong, we're going to act upon it. Okay. Now, getting more into the weeds on learning teams, when you're facilitating a learning team here, you've got to follow these basic rules. How is more important than why? Why is more important than who? This is the reverse of old view safety. If we're looking at old view, most people want to find the who before the why and the why before the how. We want to reverse that order. How did it happen? Why did it happen? And then if we absolutely 100% need to, who's responsible for that happening? But I don't want to get there. You should be identifying how and why before you even touch who. It's going to be really hard because the first thing your foreman or your super, your project manager is going to ask you, who did this? And you've got to take a step back and say, well, why don't we look at how it happened before we go and blame someone? Okay. So you follow those first two steps, get to the third one. Make sure you get the full story. Don't start where the incident happened. Start before the incident happened. Most people start their investigations or learning teams right at the event. So in the case of the debarker, someone got hit in the chest, that's where we're starting our investigation. Don't start there. Start a day before, a week before, a month before, do a year before if you need to, and get the full story. You are not going to get the full story if you include managers at all. You can't have any management pressure. I don't care if you have the best organization in the world, best managers, the best supervisors, no matter what, there's going to be peer pressure in that room as soon as the superior steps into it. So when you're getting the story, make sure managers are not in the room so you can get the full story. Then a few more things in here. Build a report, and that report is better to be informal than formal. Don't write me a friggin' 10-page paper on why something happened. It should be less than a page. I want to know how it happened, why it happened, and if need be, who's responsible for that happening. Those are the things that we talked about in the first 2 points, right? Informal reports are better than formal reports. So Sidney Dekker does a lot of work around what's called just culture, which incorporates a lot of what we're talking about today. And he has a quote about learning teams. It, meaning learning teams, has to do with being open, with a willingness to share information about safety problems without the fear of being nailed for them. So that means workers should have the opportunity to tell their story, tell you why it happened and how it happened, without fear of punishment or retaliation. Okay. So that's all good and dandy. We went through our 5 points, but there's a few more things that we can do that really affect human and organizational performance programs. And the first one is trade-offs. How many of you remember Ford Pintos? A few of you? Okay. So usually when I give this presentation, it's with an older group of individuals, and they were born during this time or they were around during this time that Pinto incident occurs, right? What Ford did was develop this great car. It's the car of the future, they call it, right? It's supposed to be compact, good on gas, all this good stuff. Well, in the design plans, they put the fuel tank right at the back bumper. What do you think happens to a fuel tank that's right behind the rear bumper when you get rear-ended? Catches on fire. It ruptures, spark comes in, boom. What do you think happens to the individuals in the cars when that fuel tank explodes? They die or get severely injured. Ford knew this before they started production of the vehicle. There's documents that show now that the president of Ford Motor Company at the time knew this was going to be an issue. There's documents out there now that say their economists and their accountants figured out how much it's going to cost to pay the families of the people in those vehicles that explode, and how much it's going to cost to change the production of the Pinto. What do you think Ford did? The cost to victims was going to be $128 million. The cost of fixing the actual production problem, $137 million. What do you think Ford did? They produced the vehicle and said, we're just going to pay the victims. That $128 million, I've been told, is 10 times that right now. Well over $1 billion invested into the victims and the families of the victims in those crashes. This is what we call a trade-off. Ford decided that money was more important than the people driving their vehicles. So they didn't fix the production problem and accepted the fact that people were going to die in their vehicles. Do not do that in your organization. You're going to encounter it in construction. People are going to say, get it done at all costs, and it's your job to say, let's get it done safely and then worry about the cost later. Don't trade people's lives for money. Production, schedule, whatever it is. This is why schedule is the #1 killer in construction. Okay? Remember these 3 questions from JHAs and PTP taught? So these are the 3 questions that I tell all of my clients to do before they start their work. This is not documented. This is not on a piece of paper that you hand into the site super. This is in small groups of people that are just having a conversation based around these 3 questions. 3 questions are, what's the most dangerous thing or dangerous task that I'm about to do or my workers are about to perform? What are my controls for that task? And are those controls actually enough? I know we've been over this before, but it's that important. We need to know these 3 questions, not only for tests and quizzes and whatever, when you get out into the field. You should be asking these 3 questions every single day and making sure that your team leaders are incorporating this into morning meetings. So the example I always like to use is OSHA's roofing flags. This is part of the fall protection standard for roofers. OSHA says that you can put up these yellow warning flags around the roof's edge. If you're a roofer, they need to be 6 feet back from the edge. So in this case, these stanchions are 6 feet roughly back from the edge. OSHA standard also says roofers can go beyond those warning lines. So they can just go right underneath and walk out to the edge or the cap of the roof, and they don't need fall protection, so long as someone is watching them. What happens if the employee slips on the edge of the roof and goes over the edge? Probably going to be really badly hurt or die. Okay? Now, if we're going to ask these 3 questions, we should probably take that into account, right? So what's the most dangerous thing the roofer is going to do? Well, roof. What are my controls? Well, we have to protect him from falling. So my controls in this case are a compliance-related control from OSHA that says, oh, we just put warning flags up and they can go out there without fall protection. Well, then we get to the 3rd and most important question. Is that control actually enough? Can someone still fall off the roof and die? 100%. So let's go back to the second question. What are my controls? Let's say we put them in personal fall arrest systems, which we're going to talk about next week, the week after. If someone falls, now what's going to happen? They're going to be caught by their harness, right? Probably won't die, but there's still a small chance that they could die if they're not wearing their equipment properly. So is that control enough? Maybe. Let's go back to the second question again, though. What are my controls? Well, fall protection isn't enough. Warning lines aren't enough. What else can we do? We can use a barrier. We can use a parapet wall. We can use guardrails. We can use some other structure so that when someone contacts it, they're not going over the edge of the roof. They're going to be stopped by that guardrail. So is that control enough? Can anyone actually fall over the edge of the roof anymore? No. So you see how we just developed controls that are actually good at protecting people. That's why those 3 questions are so important, especially that 3rd one. So we're coming up towards the end of this, I promise. These are the goals that I always give to organizations, and these are the goals that our Sharp companies currently use, or they're in the process of starting to use them. And these are things that you can use in any organization that you join when you graduate. First being create five goals in new view safety, health, performance areas. So failure, error, blame, learning teams, all that stuff. Make 5 goals based on the 5 pillars that I just gave you. Start a few learning teams or some sort of non-blame oriented review. So just bring a group of people together and talk about what happened. Remember, how is more important than why is more important than who. Start that simply. Ensure subcontractors are on the same page as you. This would probably be a huge challenge for you on a construction project. You can follow the 5 foundations that I just gave you all you want, but as soon as you bring on a subcontractor, your whole world changes. So spread the word to your subcontractors so they can actually use this stuff. Create an action plan for things you know can be improved. So if you know that there's some problems in your system, write them down, prioritize them so you can fix them. Do a climate survey. See where employees think they're at in an organization. How do they view management? How do they view their peers? You can identify and work towards finding non-routine tasks, planning for them, and stopping work when they're encountered. This is the whole conversation we had about what success actually looks like. So in the case of the debarker, there would be no jams. When there was a jam that occurred, we'd know something was wrong. We can fix it. Then focus on real-time leading indicators. You guys know what that is. I don't need to dig into that anymore. Just make sure you're measuring prior to an incident rather than after an incident. And then this is probably the best summary slide that I've seen. It's not actually mine. It's from someone called Todd Conklin. He summarizes the 2 different views of safety. So when we look at traditional safety, old view safety, workers are the problem, we need to fix them. We need to make them better. In new view safety, workers are not the problem, they're the problem solvers. We use them because they're smart at what they do. Second one, we must tell workers what to do, perhaps more importantly, what not to do in old view safety. So we're just going to tell them to do it our way or the highway. In new view safety, we don't tell our organizations what to do, we ask them what they need. So when a worker is doing something that's off track, ask them why they're doing it and what can I do to help. Don't just blame them for going off track. Number 3, safety is the absence of accidents. That's the first definition we went over in old view. Where in new view, safety is not the absence of accidents, it is the presence of capacity. Tesla, Fenway, all that good stuff. Then lastly, minor injury reduction correlates to fatality reduction. So that's the whole discussion around high-risk pyramid. If we have 50% fewer unsafe acts, that means we're going to have 50% fewer fatalities. It's not true, remember that. Where in new view safety, minor injury reduction has no correlation on fatality reduction. So that means just because we're reducing the smaller injuries doesn't mean we're not going to have any fatalities. We've actually got to make our organizations safe. And that's the conversation around the guy with the fall protection on the roof and without the fall protection on the roof. Okay? If you guys are ever interested, those are all the books I had to read to do this. You can read them too if you want. Questions? Pretty complex stuff, huh? There's a lot there. And I mean, it is what it is. It's complex, but this, I promise you, will be, oh, that's good, be the future of safety and health, all right? This is what you're going to encounter when you guys